multiple times that this is supposed to be a very informal presentation. Presentation, really. Think of this as an office hour where you come to me and tell me everything you know about Amazon Mechanical Turk, but do not assume any prior knowledge. So I threw together a few slides just for the reference and for my own memory. Let me just move this around, perhaps. Okay, that's even better. Okay, so the information about open office hours, this one and the following ones will be available on Words in the World website. We already have the next one scheduled exactly a week from now. It will be about how to run chronometric experiments online. So please go there for information about the upcoming events. And also there will be some materials that I will be making. Well, I will make all materials available to all participants, and the information about where to look for them will also appear on this website. So please stay tuned. Okay, a couple of disclaimers. That's my first time doing this kind of a gig on Zoom. So bear with me if there are any glitches. Also, when deciding how exactly to pitch this office hour, I talked to a few colleagues and students and friends, and we decided that it's more important to be informal than polished. It's more important to give basic information in a detailed way than to have something that is very well formed. So so you will see just how informal it's going to be. In fact, we will be tinkering together with some online tools for this hour. I hope the connection stays well, and yes, pets and children, so we might get something of this sort. Again, my apologies in advance. I hope we get through without any glitches. So crowdsourcing is a relatively new development, well, perhaps as of approximately 10 years ago. These tools have become available. They work in much the same way. There are requesters that have tasks that need to be completed. Requesters in our parlance are experimenters. We have tasks. We have experiments that we want to be done. And on the right-hand side, we have workers or participants who want to earn money and work on interesting tasks. So the crowdsourcing tools are platforms. We see them in the middle, like Mturk marketplace. So these are marketplace where the experimenters and participants are brought together, and we experimenters can post our studies, and workers will be able to participate in them and earn some money in the meanwhile. So there are a few crowdsourcing solutions that are available. We will mostly concentrate on the first one, Amazon's Mechanical Turk, or Mturk for short. There's also Crowdflower and Prolific and some other platforms. Each comes with its own interface and design. Each taps into a slightly different population. For now, we will really concentrate on Amazon's Mechanical Turk. One of the reasons is that I know it better than other tools, and also it has some functionality that some other platforms might not have. So why the name Amazon's Mechanical Turk? Well, it's a historical anecdote, if you wish. There used to be a machine, a robot, which looked like a Turkish person in a fez hat that was supposed to be able to play chess. So it moved the pieces, it played against human opponents, and it actually won over many of them. But of course, the real driving engine was the small little person here sitting in the box, who actually moved the pieces and did all the thinking for the robot. So the idea then is that we use human intelligence to do the tasks in an automated way. right, in a way that is as much automatized as possible. To introduce a few terms that the Amazon Mechanical Turk uses. So marketplace for our intents and purposes is participant pool. A hit or human intelligent task is a task, so an experimental task really, that we can create ourselves. Workers are participants and requesters are experimenters. As you've probably figured out by now, I do not assume any prior knowledge of Amazon's Mechanical Turk, which means that many of you will be bored to death. Those of you who have dealt with it, this is really not pitched to the level of any knowledge. When talking to my colleagues, they told me, just go from scratch, explain as you would to a person who has never seen any crowdsourcing tool. So that's what I'm doing now. And if there is a desire for a more advanced open office hour, we can always schedule it in the future. Okay, so back to the Mechanical Turk. Some practicalities. How does the payment work? We pay Amazon, Amazon.com, and Amazon.com pays the workers and takes a fee that ranges mostly between 20 and 40% of what we pay the participants. It works with credit cards, personal or credit cards. Experience reimbursement from universities is completely okay even for personal credit cards. So that's a viable solution. Now, as far as ethics is concerned, all workers are de-identified at the onset. So we only see their worker IDs, which is this combination of alphanumeric characters, as you see here. So for Canadian universities, we do need the ethics clearance for Amazon Mechanical Turk studies. This is not the case for every university. We do need ethics clearance, but it's typically relatively easy to get because of the de-identified nature of the workers. Okay, so requesters or experimenters, it used to be the case for years that only the US residents with the American credit card and bank account could be the requesters. It's not the case anymore. Here's a list of countries that are allowed as requesters, meaning we can set up, if you're from a country that is in this list, you can set up your own account, use a credit card linked to a bank in one of these countries, and everything will go smoothly. Okay, very briefly, what is the demographics of Mturk or Amazon Mechanical Turk? What kind of marketplace are we tapping into? So the data I have here are about 1 year old. So back then there used to be 100 to 200,000 unique workers on Amazon. And at any given time, we had between 2,000 to 5,000 workers, right, day or night, which is, of course, an amazingly large and demographically broad sample to have. It's relatively short-lived, this workforce, so about 50% of them will change within 12 to 18 months. And I have a link to more demographic information. What's important to know that Amazon Mechanical Turk is heavily American-based or biased, if you want. So about 75% of the workers come from the USA, 16% from India, and Canada is represented by just 1%, and then the numbers are much smaller. So that's important to keep in mind when deciding what demographics to tap into. And other platforms like Prolific or Crowdflower give access to different populations, different representations of countries. Gender-wise, in the US, there are more female than male workers, but say 55 to 45%. So the gender distribution is relatively good. These numbers show effectively that there are fewer older participants in the US as compared to the general population. And there's a slight slight increase in, well, there's slightly more of younger participants in Amazon Turk than there is in the population at large. As far as the income is concerned, I'm now looking at the right-hand plot. Typically, workers on Mechanical Turk are more wealthy than the average, than the US population at large. So again, this is something to keep in mind if you're worried about your sampling and who your workers are. But since most of us are perfectly content with convenience pools of university students and the biases that come with that, Amazon Mechanical Turk is definitely a step forward in towards a much broader, much more varied population. Okay, so we'll go in a moment. We'll access the website and do a few experiments. It's good for two things. First of all, it's good as a platform for collecting all non-chronometric data. So if you want to build an experiment in Amazon Turk, you can do effectively everything that does not count time. And another use for it, which is really very beneficial, is to recruit participants for online experiments that are prepared elsewhere. So if you have an online experiment in a whole variety of platforms, you will be able to recruit participants through Amazon Turk, make them perform your task in that other experiment, and then pay them through Amazon Turk. So we will. This will be the first thing we will discuss now, how exactly to implement that. And a week from now, there will be an office hour by Jordan Galland, who will talk to us about how to build experiments that collect chronometric data, so they can be hooked up to Amazon Turk. Okay, so we will cover today, first and foremost, how to link to external experiments, and then we will talk about how to create within the Amazon Mechanical Turk surveys, tasks that are, well, close predictability tasks, collecting plausibility or similar ratings, how to create an experiment that looks at similarity of pairs of objects. We can think of semantic similarity, semantic transparency, or the like. And we will look at how to build a Likert rating scale judgment, an experiment that collects those. So that's the plan for today. I hope to only talk for maybe 30, 40 minutes, and then open it for questions. Okay, so again, we will move slowly and stick to basics. So ease over complexity. That's the sort of overarching idea here. When you ask me, I promise I will not have all the answers, but I equally promise to take note and try and get back to you in possibly the next installment of the office hour. As far as I'm concerned, we can have as many follow-up meetings as we have demand for. And once again, stay tuned for other open hours. Okay, and there are some resources that we will use along the way. Effectively, everything that I will tell you today is available through tutorials on Amazon Mechanical Turk. So here are some pointers to where to look for them. And with this, I close my PowerPoint, and I move over to www.mturk.com. So this is the homepage of Amazon Mechanical Turk. And the first thing that we will want to do is sign in as a requester. So I specifically created a new account for requesters so that it's not linked to my previous experiments. So here's a sign-in page, and this step is something that you can do to open your own account on Amazon Mechanical Turk. So we're going in. So when you open this homepage, you will see the projects that you have created beforehand, and I have created a few test tasks that I will be referring to occasionally. But most of what we'll be doing today is using the templates for a large variety of of projects and tasks that are already available on Amazon Mechanical Turk. So I deliberately shut down the sort of the knowledge and the skills that I have, so that we go together through the templates that are available to everybody. So I now clicked on New Project, and so what we get is a list of templates that we can recycle, cannibalize, use, and change for our purposes. As you can see, they start with a survey, 2 types of survey. Then there's a large number of tasks related to vision. I won't be talking too much about those. And then we have a bunch of tasks related to language, which of course is very much relevant to what we do. And then other projects are available. So let's start with, and of course, once you highlight one of the projects, it gives you a rough idea of what it would look like. So you get a preview. Let's start with what they call survey link, which is an experiment that effectively the only thing that it does, it links to an external experiment and allows the workers to access this experiment, and then comes back and manages the payment. So we are at survey link now, and I create project, which will effectively copy all the code that we had that is there in the template and makes it available to us. So we will rename this into, let's call it OOH for Open Office Hour, OH Server Link. And this tab is where you can set up properties of your study. We will actually come back to this in a second. For now, I'll just save this new name. We'll start with the content of this study and come back to the properties. Okay, so this is what it looks like. We have instructions, which we can change and add our own text or change it in every which way. We have which is an online experiment that is created independently. And we have a menu, we have a text box here where workers will provide the code once they finish their survey. So let's use one of the online experiments that I have. I opened them as a text file, which is the cheat sheet. These are notes for myself to keep track of what we're doing and how we're doing it. And I will make it available to you. So as you can see, the first point was to do an external survey. So I'm just copying over a link to an online experiment that we have implemented. It collects data about novel word learning and has a bunch of experiments all implemented online. So all I need to do is delete that link and put in the new information, right? And I will also want to change the instructions a tiny bit. This is just to show to you that it's all editable. So we are conducting an experiment about novel word learning. Yes. Select the link. I will delete this. Select the link below to complete the survey. At the end of the survey, you will receive a code to paste into the box below to receive credit for taking our survey. So these are obviously instructions to the workers, and we don't need to change them. So it's a good idea to, if you create an external experiment, and Jordan will talk about that a week from now, it's a good idea to create some code, a unique code that your workers will type in here once they're done with their experiment. Because this is the only knowledge for you that they've actually type some random code. Let's save this. Okay. And go back to enter properties. So now that we, oh man. Okay. So this new survey is now appearing here as a OOH survey link, and we go back to editing it. Are you still with me? Yeah. Well, I have no way of verifying.
Yes, there he is anyway. So I think that's the.
Thank you.
We're still here.
Victor,
Okay, great.
Victor,
Great.
can
Thank you. So,
can I make a suggestion, Victor?
yes.
When you change slide, please wait about 2 seconds before you speak again because it reduces the bandwidth transfer and we lose your vocal.
Okay, we'll do that. So thank you. Thank you, Sid. I will do that. Okay, so we are on to entering some properties, and these will describe the project name, which we now defined. We also provide the title, so answer or perhaps complete an experiment testing your word learning knowledge. We provide a description, so read texts and answer questions. Okay, we can provide keywords and so on. More importantly, we need to set up the reward. This is the payment part. So the reward is in American dollars. We use a good practice, we use it as a best practice to pay in proportion to the minimum wage in the USA. Right? So the minimum wage is about $8 per hour now. So we know from previous runs this experiment takes about half an hour.
Okay, well, so.
Yeah. So we define this reward as $4. The number of respondents for now, for our testing purpose, we'll just do perhaps 2. We set up the time that we allocate
Looked at it.
to the work.
I moused over it and then it kind of said mute.
Okay, so we provide the time that we allow the worker to work on this, and we can do 2 or 3 hours, whichever the case might be. We define how long we want this task to be available to workers on Amazon Mechanical Turk, 7 days. We set how many days we allow ourselves to go and check the results. And if we don't go and check the results in 3 days, all workers will be paid automatically. So that's the protection for the workers to get paid for their work, even if we forget to do so. And finally, we get to worker requirements. So let me not explain right now what the masters is. This is require the workers to be masters. But let's talk a little about additional qualifications that workers must meet.
That would be a microphone button.
Okay. Okay. So we can add several criteria, and some of them are given to us for free by Amazon Mechanical Turk. So they have to do, the first one and the third one have to do with how successful that worker was with their previous experiments, as in how many hits they have successfully completed and were paid and everybody was happy. So we can filter the bad workers this way. And another option that I find very useful is location. So we can select which countries we want our workers to come from. Okay, so there's a logical operation to say is one off, so we can set this up to say United Kingdom and United States. Okay, so and on the screen, and I'll just use this to demonstrate that there are there's a long list of the so-called premium qualifications, which means that we can use this information. We can tap into, say, age 55 or older. We can tap into information that workers provided about their, say, gender, and a bunch of other properties. We can even filter by household income or what their job is. And Amazon will levy an extra fee for this information. So these are qualifications that are available. These are filters that are available, but they will cost us a little more. There's also language fluency, basic fluency in a couple of languages. There's obviously something that might become important for us. So this is the setup. Just to reiterate, we have set the reward to $4 for about half an hour of work. We now only ask for 2 respondents, and we restrict them to United Kingdom and United States, and we save these settings. We go to design account. Oh, my changes didn't save, so I'll very briefly go back, change this to reading comprehension, and save. Okay, so we can now preview our experiment. It looks good. In fact, when we preview, we see what it will look like to the worker. So the instructions will be provided here, and the server link is here. And we are done with setting up this Amazon Mechanical Turk experiment. So all we need to do now is publish badge, which will make this task available to the marketplace, to workers. We click next. I have set up a credit card beforehand, and I have some credit to apply towards this experiment. So as you can see, it's $4 times 2 workers, so $8, and the fee is $160, which I believe is 20%. So $960 will be the cost of this experiment. And we publish.
There's just one question that's come up, and that is, are the additional costs for premium recruiting by subject or experiment?
They are by subject. So these are, well, sorry, let me rephrase that. These are additional percent that are added to the total sum, and of course the total sum depends on the number of subjects. Okay. So we will not wait for the results to come in, because it's a half-hour experiment, so we'll probably not see the end result of it. But this is that once you have an online experiment, it's very easy to run it. Okay, let's go to the next type of an experiment, which will be survey. We go back to new project.
A couple more questions that have come up as we're changing gears here. So the next portion of your presentation, would you be able to address some of these questions?
Yes, of course. Very happy to.
So one is, could you explain tasks versus assignments?
Tasks versus assignments. Well, effectively, what we're creating is a task. What we're creating in Amazon Turk is a task, which will be provided to multiple people, as many people as we set up in the settings. So each person will see one instance of this task, and they will complete it, and once they're done, we get to see their results, and we will approve their results and provide them with payment. We will very soon see a much shorter experiment where we will get the results straight away, and so we'll be able to get through the whole procedure. Any other questions at this point?
Yeah, so the next one is, how do you make sure that Mturkers are native speakers of English?
Right, so there's no easy way to do that. The way we get around that is we ask them what languages they speak, or we ask them what their first language is. And then we still pay them if they say, if they give a different answer than English, but we only use the data where they specified English as their first language. And this way we, they don't have an incentive to provide wrong information, because we never filter on them, on that information. We never filter the payment, but in the data we will only use those that say English.
That's great. There are a couple more. Would you rather answer them now or hold till the end?
Let's have perhaps one more, and then I'll move to the next thing.
Sure. So the next one is, could you choose the education of the workers?
Yes. In those premium qualifications, there are educational levels. So it can be a filter. What we also tend to do is have this education as a question in a survey. And this way we don't filter out anyone, but we get information that we will then use as a covariate in the model, or perhaps as a filter.
Great. Okay.
Okay. So let me move to the next one. So far, we only looked at Amazon Mechanical Turk as a way to provide access to an experiment that we have created elsewhere. Now we're moving to how to create experiments within Amazon Mechanical Turk. And here's a survey that we will now copy over. A template for a survey, I should say. Give it a minute. We'll call it Open Office Hour Survey. We will make this a survey about your, say, language background. This information about your language background. We'll make this a very brief survey, so we'll perhaps we will pay maybe 10 cents for it and have just 3 responders. I will save this and move to the actual design. Okay, so this looks different from the previous one. I realized that. In fact, when I was preparing for this for this office hour, I realized that Amazon Mechanical Turk has changed its interface in January. So much of this will be as new to me as it is to you. But the point is that we'll look at some code that creates this visual representation. So I'm now clicking at the tab Preview and Finish. So it will take a moment to get there. Takes a little more than a moment. Okay. So what we see is some information for us. This is just a preview. And then we can view instructions. These will be the instructions that we will now define in a second in that code in the other tab. And then we have a bunch of questions, some of which require typing in a response. Others are checkboxes that we can check or uncheck and type in information. Yes. Some of the questions use a scale like this. So that's what we can use for for our purposes as well. And yet another one is writing a short essay describing your favorite bird. So we will not make it about birds, we'll make it about language. So I go back to design layout. Everything that we saw now in this visual representation is code here. And all we need to do is change the text that is provided in the respective bits of code. So this is based on HTML language. So if you've done any web programming, it will look familiar. But unfortunately, Amazon Mechanical Turk decided to make its own interface and its own tags. So we have to live with that. So this is a short summary of the task. And I will type in, please answer questions below. Okay. I will remove the detailed instructions. I will remove the positive and the negative example, because I think it's a bit of an overkill for a simple experiment like that. Now, let's ask some questions about language. So what is your first language? Okay. So this will now appear. Let me save this and preview. So our changes will now be reflected in the way that the experiment looks. So view instructions has only the summary. Please answer questions below, and it won't have detailed instructions or examples. We can of course remove instructions altogether or redo them. And now, what is your first language? We will get rid of this example pink, but people will be typing in whatever responses they have. Okay. So let me go back to design layout. So the name of the variable that will hold the response is now called, it has a name of favorite color. We can change it to first language. And I think we can change the placeholder from pink to, say, English. And the word required means that people have to provide a response to this field. They cannot just omit it. Now, also refer to the beginning of this document, because it says for the full list of available elements and their documentation, please refer to, and this is a link that we will now open because it has the information about all. It has the information about every value in every variable and command. Okay. So let's move on. Check this box if you like birds. Check this box if you, say, speak Spanish. We can do that. And perhaps we shouldn't make it a required question, and we should rename this into speak Spanish. And on a scale of 1 to 10, how would you describe your reading proficiency in English? Now, I hope you realize that I'm making this up as I go, right? So the instructions and the descriptions of variables can and should be much more well thought through, but we are just doing a presentation here. So I renamed this variable to read English, and this is the scale that will go from 1 to 10 in steps of 1, and it will show a small little blue pin that you saw on the previous slide, and it's a required variable. And finally, you can, well, instead of writing a short essay, perhaps we can say write down all languages that you speak. So we'll rename it into, say, all languages. Give it perhaps only 2 rows of input instead of 4, and maybe no placeholder. So we're asking to preview what came out of this, of our changes. Okay, so while we're still previewing it, we can type in some values. I'll move this to here and some other languages. And if we press the submit button, Amazon Mechanical Turk will show us what the data will look like. So all languages will be the variable with this value, which is what I typed in as, well, simulating a worker. First language will retain this value, read English will be 8, which is where I put my pin, and so on. So this looks good, and so we finished the experiment. OOH survey, and we publish, and we publish this batch. So what will now appear is, again, information about payment, and I will be asked to confirm that I actually want this to go through. Okay, so tasks available, just 1, 10 cents per task, and duration 1 hour. So I think this looks fine. I will pay 30 cents and another 6 in fees. So in 36 cents, I will collect my data. And we publish. And so once the payment goes through, this experiment will be posted online, and we can then track all experiments by going to the Manage page. And right now it has 2 experiments, the survey link and survey. Okay, so survey link has just returned the first result. Assignments completed, 1 out of 2. So there were 2 assignments because there were 2 people, but the task, of course, is the same. So one of them is completed. We can review the results straight away by clicking review results. Okay, so here's the information that I get here. It's the hit ID, so that's the ID of the task that I posted. This is the worker ID, so that's as much as I will ever know about this person. They have never participated in any experiment, in any hit on Amazon Turk before, because they have no approval rate, so that's a brand new worker. And this is the survey code. So this is the information that they put as a code upon completion of my survey. Because it's an external experiment, all the data is saved somewhere else on the server, which is connected to the online experiment. All I get here is survey code, and now I can check the checkbox next to this person and approve, and this person immediately gets paid. So that's really the whole life cycle of an experiment. Let me go back to manage. Looking at the time, it's pretty clear I won't get too far. I will not even start talking about new experiments, but let's see if we get any more hits. Perhaps not, but we'll get back to the manage page later on and see what the results look like in the survey task. So it's 1:48. Well, like I said, it's a new format to me. So I have not perhaps calculated the time correctly. If it's any consolation, I'm happy to continue, well, either today or we can get an additional office hour. And I will walk you through surveys and how to create an experience for ratings or Likert scale, how to collect plausibility judgments, and a whole bunch of other experiments that are non-chronometric. It's very easy to implement. So let me stop here. Let's open for questions.
Okay, so as you were speaking, many people have been entering questions. We did answer a few, but if you open up the chat window at the bottom, Dr. Kuperman, you'll see the list of questions.
Okay. Yeah, it's chat 19. All right.
So it will be, the last one that did not get answered was from Teresa Pham at 1:34 p.m. And it was, what do you consider a good appropriate hit rate? And then below that are new questions.
Right. Okay, so we tend to lose between 20 to 30% of our workers to well, to some criteria. Either they're not the speakers of the language that we want, or they don't answer questions. It's a good idea to insert control questions that actually tap into the calls and responses. We will get to talk to this the next time, but generally we tend to lose about 20 to 30% of workers, which is fairly comparable to what we lose in the lab. Yeah. I'm assuming that this is what is meant by hit rate. If not, please ask me later. Next, do you think it's possible to collect data from French people who are learning Italian? So the percentage of non-US citizens on this specific platform, Amazon Mechanical Turk, is tiny. So what I would suggest is to go to Prolific, a different platform with slightly different rules, but it's much more European based. And the percentage of speakers of European languages is much greater there. Okay, can you link or recreate an existing test, Pulp or Boston name test, if these tests have been published and have copyrights? Do I have to learn how to code? Right, so let me start with this. So copyrights, of course, is Amazon Mechanical Turk doesn't make it any easier or more difficult. So if a copyright needs to be obtained to run a test, then it will be the same as it would be in the lab. So to learn how to code or more user-friendly interface. So to answer this question, this is precisely what Amazon Mechanical Turk has just changed to the worse. So it used to be the case that there would be a very user-friendly interface. Now, a minimal knowledge of coding is necessary, but I hope to have convinced you that it's truly minimal. Most of the time, all we need to do is change the text in the template to a different text, or perhaps copy and paste bits and pieces of code. Yeah, so I know I didn't get to demonstrate this today, but I'm happy to do this the next time around. Next question, is language fluency restricted to a closed list of languages? Right, so as far as premium qualifications go, yes, it's close to some languages, because this is information that workers provide about themselves when they sign up. I mean, they can choose to provide this information. So this pre-filtering can only be applied to some of the languages. If we're looking for speakers of Greek or Turkish or Russian, it would need to be an open task, an open hit, with just some of the workers happening to be speakers of Greek or Turkish or Russian. So unfortunately, there's no easy way to get to them directly. Can the workers be limited to narrow regions such as New York City? Yes. I don't think there's a way to restrict them to a city, but there is a way to restrict them to a state. So within premium qualifications, if you go down the list, you will see, you will definitely see states and territories of the USA as possible selection criteria. Where do you place the syntax to ensure you have a unique worker? Right, so each worker has a unique ID, and typically what we do, because, well, to be absolutely honest, Amazon Mechanical Turk is cheap, right? So we tend, if there is a situation that a single worker has provided multiple responses to your hit, first of all, they will not be able to, right? They can only take one hit a single time. But if it so happens that you have posted one and the same experiment multiple times, and there's the same person coming and doing this experiment multiple times, what we do is take the worker's ID, find the duplicates, and only take the first response from this person and discard everything else. So this is part of the reason we're losing 20 to 30% of responses. Some of them are duplicate responses. Is it possible to set a minimum payment and then add progressively an extra income? Yes, so there are several ways of doing that. Perhaps the simplest way is to provide a bonus. So if you are, you set up indeed a minimum payment, and then it's a good idea to then say in the description of your experiment that if you do well, you will get a bonus. And then Amazon Mechanical Turk has a way to go back to the workers that you like and provide a bonus to them. Again, something I'm happy to discuss when we have more time. Okay, so here's, thank you, Theresa. So here's an explanation, hit approval rate. So we can select our qualifications criteria by selecting only those people who have done well in the past. We typically set this either to nothing, so we receive everybody who's there as a worker, or we set it to 50%. This way we sort of get filtered out those participants who were not doing particularly well in the previous tasks. Okay, so when someone completes the experiment but they don't meet the qualifications specified in the external link, they still get paid. This is correct. So there is a way, of course, to recruit people through Amazon Turk and add some filters from get-go, right? So, but effectively, if they have gone to the external experiment and came back and filled in that code, then they still get paid. Okay, have you done any control experiments comparing data from local verified participants and Mturk? Yes, we actually have a few papers. Let me rephrase. There's a whole small cottage industry that compares lab workers to Mturk workers, or lab participants to Mturk participants. Typically, and we have some in the lab, we have some papers on that, which I can make available through the website. Typically, lab workers are a little more accurate, but not by much, and you filter out fewer of them. So in Amazon Turk, we typically lose a larger percent of participants, but generally Amazon Mechanical Turk is thought of as a fairly reliable platform, and there are ways to increase quality by including control questions in your task and excluding people who did not do well, excluding data from the people who didn't do well on these surprise control questions. Do you ever block workers? If so, under what circumstances? I haven't blocked workers, but I know of cases when the task, for instance, is to provide a narrative of some sort, and they they effectively use uncalled for threats and swear words and so on. Okay. But of course, that worker will be blocked from taking part in your experiments. It doesn't mean that that person will be blocked from Amazon Mechanical Turk. Okay, going to the next one. By the way, yes, I am aware that we're at effectively at the end of this office hour. I'm happy to keep going, at the very least, to go through the questions that have been posted. Meanwhile, again, we'll find a way to get feedback from you on whether we want another iteration of an open office hour that talks about Amazon Turk, and if there is demand, I'll come back. So going back to the next one, are the workers limited to healthy individuals, or are there workers with language impairments with their proxy? As far as I know, there's no limitation to healthy individuals, and there's no qualification or selection criteria that looks into that. Okay, so yes, this definitely is a marketplace that can include people with all kinds of impairments. If I have a link to an external survey, sorry, going to Tatiana Pashkova, if I have a link to an external survey, how do I generate the code that confirms the survey completion? So this is really dependent on how your external survey works. There are easy solutions for Lime Survey and SurveyMonkey and some others. If you give me information later on what exact software you use for your external survey, I can look up and we'll talk about it. Oh, the catch of the I didn't catch the name of the other platform that you mentioned, the one that was more popular in Europe. So the name is prolific.co. I also have a reference to it in my slides. The slides, or the reference to the slides, and all other materials will also be available on the website that I advertised, the Words in the World website. This specific platform that I mentioned is called Prolific. It's it's more European based. Oh, sorry. Okay. So as far as I can tell, these are all the questions that came through chat, and I am wrapping up. But I'm happy to stay and do the auditory and the oral communication, or discuss anything that you might want to know at this point. And I think I'll stop sharing my screen as well.
Victor, this is Lori, I'm leaving, but I wanted to say this was extremely helpful. Thank you. I feel like I can tackle this beast now. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Lori. That's great to hear.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you from me as well. This is Gonia. Thank you very much, Victor. And очень спасибо. And I have to leave now, so bye.
Bye, Gonia. Пожалуйста. Stay well.
You too.
Okay, so as people are tuning out and leaving the chat and saying many, many thank yous, it was a great presentation. Thank you, Victor, for providing that. Perhaps something that we could do is basically make another file of the questions that were asked. There were some really good questions and answers, and I can get that all together and forward it to you, and we can put it up on the website there as well. But keep an eye on the website. I know there are many people that weren't able to join live that will be hoping to see a recording of sorts. So as soon as we get that together, we'll be able to post that.
Okay, excellent. And perhaps we should find the time for another installment of this. Mhm.
Yes, absolutely.
Would be good. Okay.
Victor,
Bye, Becky.
Kirana, can I ask one more question? Or are you
Sure.
available? I don't want to monopolize or take people's
Yeah,
time.
I'll stay on as long as there are
Just
questions today.
So if I want to have the same person take more than one test, because I want the same participant, is that possible? Can I control that?
Yes. So what you get is the worker ID of that person, and then you can specifically invite that person for
Oh.
the next task or the 2 tasks after. And in fact, we use it a lot. Well, it's not really longitudinal, but if we have an experiment that consists of multiple tasks, or we want retest these individuals, in the first task, we get their worker IDs, and then we can specifically invite them to the next task. I'll show how this is done.
And one more thing that Roya asked about non-healthy controls. Where do you specify that? How do we know that they have Alzheimer's disease or something, or aphasia?
Yeah, we have to ask. So that this must be a question in our survey. It will be up to you how to pose this question. You know, have you been diagnosed with Alzheimer's? Yes, no, or in some other way. But we'll ask just like you would in a paper and pencil format or in the lab.
And can I ask, for example, some patients that I have that are very far away, can I ask them to become an Amazon worker so I can send them links through that? I mean, is it something that people do?
So they can certainly become workers. That's perfectly fine. The catch is that you cannot invite them specifically until they have participated in any experiment of yours. So they have to sort of check in with you the first time. But what you can do, and what we've done before, is you post some experiment which doesn't pay much at all, so it's of no interest to anyone else, but you send emails to these individuals and tell them, please go online, finish this experiment, and then I will have your worker ID, and I will be able to contact you for further studies. I do see your questions, more questions in chat. I will get back to you as soon as.
Thank you.
Kiran. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. Does it make sense, Kiran?
Yes. It's perfect. Thank you.
Okay. Now, okay. So, Katharina, the question is there a way to have 2 workers interact in real time on a study? I don't think it can be done in Amazon Turk. As in, if we were to build an experiment exclusively using what Amazon Mechanical Turk has to offer, there's no way to do that. But if you can create your own online experiment, separately, independently, you can always recruit people through Amazon Mechanical Turk to go and participate in an experiment that might include interaction. Again, in a week from now, we'll get to hear about how to build those online experiments. Okay, Jordan, have you had any difficulties publishing results collected by Amazon? No difficulty at all. In fact, some of the most cited studies that I have are studies of effective norms and concreteness norms and age of acquisition norms for many thousands of words. They were collected using Amazon Mechanical Turk, and you need the ethics clearance and everything else. But these are studies that are extremely easy to implement, and hopefully the next time I'll get to show how this is done.
Sorry, if I could just follow up with that.
Sure. Hi, Jordan. Yeah.
I think my internet connect. Okay, yeah. So I guess that definitely applies to more survey-based data, but when it comes to like chronometric data collected online, do you know if there's any bias there? I was recently just going through the I don't know, through the specifications of a journal, and they seem to be wary of studies that were that had online data unless they had data collected from like they just had a large number of people. But in the chronometric studies I run, I typically don't go above 100 participants, and so that could, you know, depending on how you look at large, be considered not a large sample size.
Right. So I'm not aware of a specific, you know, dispreference or preference for a Mechanical Turk. I mean, in this setup, Mechanical Turk is just a recruitment site. So I think what you're referring to is perhaps more in reference to the actual independently built experiment, or the decision of how big the sample is. But yeah, I think a short answer is I don't know of any obstacles to publishing studies that were collected with the use of Amazon Mechanical Turk.
Great, thanks.
Sure. Okay, question: can you record voice on Amazon Turk? You know what, I don't know. Let me look it up. I'm not sure. Never seen this done, but doesn't mean it doesn't exist.
Victor, it's Eva. Thank you so much. This was really great. Did you say that next week is phase 2 of this, or I'm trying to recall what you said in the beginning?
No, next week will be a different topic.
Right.
So Jordan Gallant from Brock University, from Gary's lab, a graduate student, will be talking about how to build online experiments of your own, as it were, right? And these will be also the ones that allow chronometric measures.
Right. Okay, thank you. But would you be willing to have a phase 2 of this? So
yes,
what
absolutely.
Thank you.
I have at least 3 times the material prepared that we had today. Again, new format for me. I didn't know how long it would take.
Thank
you.
Yes. Thank you very much.
Absolutely.
This
Can
is
you
Gary.
play? Right. So sorry, I'm okay.
Yeah. So
can you play audio files to workers? Yes. So it's entirely possible to post an audio file and play it. I was just not sure about the recording. Sorry, Gary, you were saying?
I was just going to say that in response to Eva, I guess the idea is that the next one, Jordan's will build on this, in that if there are independent chronometric experiments, but of course you could recruit people to those things using Mturk, and that's the idea. Use this to do that, and then it'd be great to have a follow-up after that as well.
That's perfect. Thank you.
So I guess I'll just stay online for a little while longer, just in case there are questions. If not, that's perfectly fine. Stay well, you all, please. That's the most important thing.
Victor, thank you so much. That was really great. I really got a lot out of that, and the platform looks really very well.
Sorry, are you talking about the Zoom platform?
Yes.
Yes. Yeah. I think given that we kind of got all of this rolling within a week, and we only tapped into some of the capabilities of the program, I think we've done quite well.
Can I ask a question, like a question that's not directly related to Mturk, but maybe to the data that you collect from Mturk?
Yes, sorry, John, just one word in response to the chat. Can we email you? Yes, absolutely. Please email me. I might not be able to respond individually, but I'll find a way to respond. Yeah. Sorry, Jordan, back to you.
Yeah, I'm just trying to think. Well, this is something I'm having to deal with a lot. Is trying to take a principled stance when it comes to cleaning the data that I get from online participants, because it's really easy to say that, oh, well, maybe this person wasn't taking it seriously, or this is where they stood up and walked over and went to the bathroom and came back like 50 seconds later. My question really is when you're cleaning data that you get from online studies, is there anything different that you do than if you're doing it from in-lab study?
Yeah, so perhaps only slightly different. So
Okay.
we pay more attention to the time it takes them to respond, right? Because in the lab, you can sort of more or less be sure whether they were at the task or not. Whereas indeed, if they were doing a time-sensitive task but left for a bathroom break, then this will sort of defeat the purpose of online. And our only knowledge is the time, so the timestamps, which we get at the task level, right?
So would you also include a measure on like the instructions page, for example, to see how, like, because you could potentially measure how long they spent reading the instructions. So if it's like less than a couple seconds, then they probably didn't read it fully. Is that what you mean?
I don't think that Mturk allows you to look at specific instructions versus the body of the text. It will only tell us how long they took from the beginning to end, from accepting the task to submitting it.
Okay. Well, at least with PsychoPy, we can set timers, like set different clocks, so that you know how much time they spent on each section. So I'll definitely start doing that. That's probably, I want to know whether they've read the instructions or not, and a timer can probably tap into that information.
Absolutely. Well, yeah, there's no question that PsychoPy is a more versatile and just a better tool. It's not it's not under discussion. So Amazon Mechanical Turk is pretty basic.
Okay.
But yeah, so that plus we like to include control questions of some sort, where, you know, say they're providing semantic similarity measures for a bunch of pairs of words, and then somewhere in the middle we ask them, you know, what month of the year this is, so they have to switch over and provide an answer, or something a little more intricate, but to make sure they don't just blindly.
Yeah, I see that in quite a few rating tasks that I've done so far, is that sometimes I have a lot of participants that have standard deviations of 0 for the rating task. That's a pretty good way to see that they weren't really engaging in the task. They were just selecting a rating, but it didn't seem to be based on anything. So yeah, those are the difficult things, because I can't see them doing the experiment in front of me. So I can't. It's hard to tell sometimes who's taking it seriously and who's not. So that's really the issue I'm trying to deal with now. Anyway, thanks for answering my questions.
Oh, sure. Looking forward to your presentation a week from now.
Oh yeah, of course. Now I'm daunted, because it has to be really great for it to be a reasonable follow-up.
Thank you, Jordan.
Yeah. Thank you.
Victor, that was great. I'm gonna. Oh, here I am.
Oh, hi, Bernard. Thank you. Sorry, just responding to
just
chat.
Before everyone leaves, I just want to say thank you very much. That was really great, and really appreciate you taking the time to help us all out.
Okay.
Thanks again.
My pleasure. My pleasure. And I hope we get to continue with not just with other topics, but with this topic as well.
Great.
Okay. So
If
should I?
I could just make one more comment, I'm sure that next week, at the end, after I've finished, again, I don't think I'm going to be able to fit everything that I have to say into an hour, but so that could potentially have a follow-up as well if needed. But I'm sure there's going to be a lot of questions that will come out of that I won't be able to answer next week, because it will have mostly to do with how psychopi can interact with Mturk. So I'm sure that will also open up a couple new avenues of that we could explore too.
Terrific. Yeah.
Victor, have you seen the message regarding survey sections?
Oh, no. Let me see. Thank you, Caitlin, for pointing me to this. So can we create a survey that has different sections and also allows workers to select among options rather than writing answers under time constraints? Yes and yes. So we can definitely have a survey with, well, multiple smaller tasks, and they can be of a different kind. So some can be indeed providing a verbal answer, well, not verbal, but typing an answer. Some can be checkboxes, and some indeed can be what we call radio buttons, where you have multiple options and you just select one. You can also have what we call drop-down menus. We just didn't get to them today, but it's when you open a menu and you select just one of the options. So yes, very much so. We'll hopefully talk about these functions the next time around.
Great, so that looks like it might be it. Like I said, I will try to compile all the questions and answers and get that to you so that it can go up on the web. But thank you so much for this contribution today. It's certainly timely and very much appreciated, I'm sure.
Okay, thank you very much, and goodbye, everybody. Stay well.